What is up, guys? We are back again with another video, and in today's video we are essentially going to set out the kind of goals, or rather this video is going to be about goal setting. Okay, so I think this is the first video that I've recorded since I've been back from America. Now obviously I have been training away since that time, and I'm back into the overall rigmarole of daily life here in Ireland. But I wanted to record this video on setting my goals and then setting my training program, nutrition program, and like how I'm tracking that. So essentially this is the first step you would go about if you were thinking, okay, I actually need to lose weight, gain weight, muscle, get fitter, whatever it is. The first step you need to do when you're thinking about going to the gym, designing your program, all that stuff, you actually need to be very specific with your goals. Okay, and I don't want this video to be like, okay, here's how you do like motivational interviewing and all that kind of stuff, because that has its place, especially in a coaching context. But what I'd rather this video was about is how, this one is my vlog, so I want this to be representative of how I have gone about this process for me, right? So the easiest way to go for you guys to understand is for me to just kind of get in and start talking about this. So when I sit down and I'm going, how am I going to organize my training? How am I going to keep myself in the gym, keep myself progressing? How am I going to move forward with everything I want to do? Because like most people, I have a lot of different goals. I want to do a little bit of this and I want to do a little bit of that. Like, I have to have some sort of overarching guiding principle or something to essentially orientate myself towards. Right? And for me, the thing that I always come back to, whether my goal at the time is gaining muscle, losing body fat, sports performance, whatever it is, the overarching thing for me always essentially comes back to wanting to be healthy, right? Like, for me, I just don't really see the point in gaining 10 kilos of muscle if the processes I have to engage in to do that, or that outcome leads to ill health, right? So for me, I know my priorities. I've done a kind of needs analysis. I've done a prioritization, whatever scheme, and I'm like, the thing that always comes out on top for me as an individual is health. I essentially, to give you my long-term goals, my overarching perspective on life, I essentially want to have a few kids, ideally loads, but a few kids, and I want to be able to enjoy the lives of those kids. I don't want to be limited in, I don't know, say going out and kicking a football around with them. Like, I don't want to be limited in doing that because I'm in ill health. I'm not fit enough. I'm not strong enough to like pick them up and go for a run up the mountain or something. Like, I don't want to be limited in that perspective. But further than that, I also don't want to be limited in the perspective of not being able to enjoy my grandkids. Well, hopefully grandkids. So I want to have that long-term perspective that for the next, we'll say 60 to 70 years, if I make it that long, like, I want to be in good health. Now obviously there's a lot that goes into that, and obviously there's a lot that is completely outside of your control. Like, I could get hit by a bus just walking out after I record this video, so there's a lot of stuff that you can't control, but there is a lot of stuff that I do have control over. And while I am young now, I can put things in place so that it is more likely that I will be healthy in the future, right? So that's my perspective. Every single time I look at a goal, whether it's a specific goal in terms of, like, say I want to hit a squat number, I want to be like, I want to squat, or I want to front squat 200 kilos, say, like, keeping that in my perspective, I'm always layering on top of that if the things that I have to do to get to that, or if that outcome itself starts negatively correlating with health, then my specific goals will have to change, because health for me again comes before that. And we've talked about this before. When you're looking at any kind of training programs, nutrition programs, there's essentially three goals that most people kind of gravitate towards. There's health, there's body composition, and then there's performance. And again, like the body composition is specific to your goals. Like maybe that is you want to gain some weight, maybe that is you want to gain some fat, maybe that is you want to lose some fat, maybe that is you want to lose some muscle, gain some muscle. But the body composition, that's one kind of goal. Performance, then again, that could be mental performance, that could be physical performance, that could be sports specific performance, performance in whatever metrics that you care to track. And then the final one again is health. And for me, again, that's the one that I kind of always prioritize. And even if I am going, okay, performance right now is a little bit more of a priority, or body composition right now is more of a priority, that health metric always for me comes out on top. Like I'm not going to go, oh, I want to gain some muscle, I'm going to go on a load of steroids and gain that muscle, because for me the potential to compromise my long-term health, and then obviously the other goal of having kids, that outweighs the potential benefits of gaining 5 kilos of muscle doing a steroid cycle. So for me, that's how I always kind of orientate my goals. So health, that's the key driving factor for me, right? And I know it is for a lot of people, or rather a lot of people say that is, even though they do want to prioritize one of the other two goals at that time. They still want to have that perspective, even if it isn't as big a priority as it is for me. They still want to have that perspective that, okay, I want to improve my performance right now, or I want to improve my body composition right now, but long term I do want to still engage in healthful habits so that I do have a healthy life, a healthy long life. So for a lot of people it's kind of in the background. For some people it's kind of the more at the forefront. And again, this may be the case as well if you are having some sort of health crisis, or you've done a kind of a needs analysis in your family. You've kind of looked at stuff that occurs in your family. Maybe you'll notice that everyone on your dad's side gets heart disease, and everyone on your mother's side gets, I don't know, fucking lung cancer or something. You're kind of going, okay, I engage in the same habits, the same activities, the same environment that these people do, and they seem to get these ill health outcomes. So I'm going to have to prioritize health specifically to these outcomes so that I can try to overcome, the genetic cards that I've been dealt, right? So that's what you need to do. The first step, you need to go, what am I actually trying to do? And not just look at it very specifically, oh, I want to lose 5 kilos, because that's generally what people will say. You need to have specific goals, right? But what you need to do first, before you even look at the specific goals, is actually do a kind of, we'll say, prioritization, an order of importance for you. What are you actually trying to achieve? What does it actually look at? What does it actually look like? How does that actually look and layer over your long-term goals? Like where do you want to be in life in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years? And then how does the stuff that you're doing right now influence that? So that's what most people need to do first. Then you start nailing in on specific goals. So again, for me right now, I'm looking to, like, I was in America for 3 months there, and before that I wasn't as lean as I would have liked to have been, if that makes sense. Like, I was happy with my body composition, I was happy with my level of leanness, but I could have been leaner, and then obviously in America, you're eating some good food, some Chick-fil-A and the like. Maybe I gained, I was roughly around the same body weight, but I think my body composition had changed slightly, where maybe I lost a little bit of muscle and maybe I gained a little bit of fat, right? Again, that's perfectly fine with me, because again, the goal was to enjoy those 3 months, have fun, and I always know that I can come back, start engaging in the habits that will lead me to the body composition that I want. So right now, that's a goal for me. Those body composition goals, I want to get down to a little bit of a leaner body weight, and I want to, in doing that, increase my performance. Now, generally, you're not going to try and increase your performance massively while dieting, but again, I think I lost a little bit of muscle. Before I went away, was also dealing with a little bit of a back injury. That's, we'll say, 95% gone now, and I'm able to kind of push forward with my strength. Now, I may not be hitting, all-time PBs, but I'm able to progress even though I am in a deficit, right? And then on top of that as well, I also have the goal of getting better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, So for me, sports, especially like we'll say fighting sports, have been a large part of my life. I did boxing for years, I did some MMA type training, and now I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So for me, I want to get better at that. I'm quite shit at the moment, still obviously a white belt, and I want to get better at that. So for me, they're kind of my goals at the moment. These overarching goal of health, first of all, and we'll nail down some specifics to that in a second. Then also body composition. I want to improve my body composition. I want to lose some fat, gain some muscle if it's going, but I want to improve my body composition. And then I also want to improve my performance in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So for me, they're my kind of goals. Now, as I said earlier on, most people will tell you that is a shit way to set goals, because they're kind of airy-fairy goals. They're not exactly, I want to lose 5 kilos exactly, and like it's very specific, and then you can kind of create a timeline, right? So they're not really specific goals. So I have to make them more specific. Now the health one, really hard to kind of make specific, but I'm going to show you how you can do that in this video and subsequent videos. The performance one, in terms of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, well, I just basically have to just keep going to class, and once I notice that I am getting better, I'm able to do more complex moves, I'm able to beat people higher ranked than me, then I'll know I'm improving. So it's not exactly an easy metric to track. Like you could track it on competition, how you perform in competition. Again, it's not really, there's some degree of subjectivity, especially in the kind of lower ranks, because you could have someone who's a white belt but they're, I don't know, a black belt in fucking judo or something, so it's a little bit harder to really dial in on specifics with that. But again, using the metric that I'm noticing that I'm getting better at the movements themselves, I'm getting better at submitting people of a higher rank than me, then I know I'm progressing, right? The body composition one, again, for me specifically, like I weigh kind of, we'll say the 92 to 95 kg range, and I would like to get somewhere around that kind of 90 to 92 kilo range, right? And that's generally where I find my body composition is good. I'm happy with my physique, like really happy with my physique, and then it obviously puts me in a good position to then move on from there depending on what I want to do, right? So there are kind of some specifics to that, right? But then the next thing you need to do is you've set your goals, you've got this kind of meta goal, you've understood your order of priorities. You're like, okay, for me, again, health is the most important, but right now I do have body composition and performance goals, right? So I'm essentially I'm trying to do all three here, right? So how do I then start designing my training program around that? Well, again, there's another kind of 3-point or a trifecta of things that you need to take into account, and we'll go into these more specifically in later videos. Otherwise this video will end up being like 2 hours long. But the first thing you want to look after is your training, right? So you have to design a training program that is suitable to allow you to achieve all those 3 goals that I have, So that means that I'm going to pick movements that are beneficial to my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and then also my body composition goals. But they also have the perspective that they are also enhancing my long-term health, right? And again, I'll talk more specifically about that in subsequent videos, right? The next thing you have to consider is your overall nutrition, right? And again, that comes down to both the quantity aspect and the quality aspect, right? Because again, if I'm training hard, I have some specific body composition goals. As we've discussed before, the key driver in all of that is the calories in, calories out argument, right? Or topic. And obviously that's one component. That's going to be the biggest determinant of, my energy balance is the biggest determinant of how my body weight responds, or how my body weight is changing over time, but on top of that, I do have body composition goals and I do have performance goals, right? So that means that I can't just say, okay, I need to be in a 500 calorie deficit. Yes, that's true, but I actually want to improve my body composition as I go. So that makes the macronutrient composition of that diet more important, right? Again, it's still not overriding the calorie thing. It just means that it is important to also layer on the macronutrients. But beyond that, I'm also being influenced by the perspective that I care about long-term health as well. So I also care about the actual quality, the foods that I pick that actually constitute even the diet, the macros and the calories, right? So there's all of those things that I have to layer on. And again, we'll go into a video discussing that a little bit more. Excuse me. So that's the second thing. So we have training, has to be complementary to those 3 goals that I have. The nutrition, again, has to be complementary to those 3 goals that I have. And then finally, we have the lifestyle aspects. And again, this is a little bit airy-fairy because, again, it's not as specific as training. It's not as specific as the diet, right? There's stuff like sleep quality, your sleep hygiene habits, your stress management, how you're managing your overall stress day to day. And then there's stuff like, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, like so your day-to-day steps and stuff like that, and then obviously there's all these other habits and things that go into this lifestyle stuff, like what's your community like how are you interacting with the people around you, do you feel happy in your environment, how is life in general going, so all of those things play into that lifestyle habit. So there's a number of things that you have to kind of be aware of with that. But again, we'll go into that in more detail in kind of subsequent videos, right? So we've got those. We have the 3 topics that, 3 goals. I have my prioritization in that. I know health is, most important for me. I know that for me, that's the thing that is always my guiding arrow. And then other than that, I have some body composition and some performance in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu goals, right? And again, if you were to ask me to order them, I'd probably say the body composition is below the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Because for me, if I notice that, I got down to the 90 kg mark, but my performance was absolutely terrible, and trying to maintain that body weight and perform well just wasn't working, I probably try to gain a little bit more weight, right? But again, I'd still have to layer that on top of the perspective that I care about my health. So being overly fat, because again, there's only so much muscle I can gain as a natural trainee. If I'm overly fat, then that doesn't really contribute to my overall long-term goal of health. So again, you have to kind of look into that overall dynamic there. The next thing then is you set those 3 parameters, your training, your nutrition, and your lifestyle. And then from that, you have specific metrics that you're going to track. And again, we'll go more in depth into pretty much all of these, because again, this is something that we do with clients. Again, depending on their goal, we'll set certain metrics that we're really paying attention to. And obviously, again, it changes based on where they are in their life, what they're doing, what their overall goals are, all of that kind of stuff. So these aren't like, you must be tracking all of these metrics if you want to succeed. It's like, no, some of these are more important depending on where you are, what you want to do, and who you are, So again, just some metrics kind of off the top of my head. We're in track neat, so I just do that through steps, so I set myself a step target, which is very important again, because I essentially have a sedentary lifestyle, because between college and the work that I do, both of those things basically require me to sit down all day and be at a computer, right? So there's not a lot of activity. And even though, which we'll get into, I'm training twice a day for 4 days per week, my overall caloric expenditure throughout a day can be quite low if I don't put that emphasis on actually tracking my steps, right? And obviously that plays into the overall health aspect as well, because it helps with better blood glucose management, helps with overall stress. I also generally try to walk outside, so I'm getting stuff like sun exposure, light exposure, fresh air, all those kind of things. So they all do play into it as well. And then the next metric, diet. Again, this is both a quantitative and a qualitative assessment. We're keeping track of certain metrics within there. Like obviously the easy one is just your calories and your macronutrients, but then you also have to set up healthful habits in terms of the food selection you actually employ, and you actually have to keep track of that in terms of, you can't just say like, oh yeah, I'm going to eat fish 3 times per week or I'm going to eat fatty fish 3 times per week because I want to get those omega-3s. And you can say that, and you can say your diet is like that, but then if you actually don't track that and don't actually set out a schedule to consume fish 3 times per week. It's just not going to happen. So you actually have to track that stuff, right? Until it becomes second nature to you and it's just essentially something that you do without even thinking about it. And then there's other stuff like sleep. And again, a lot of this stuff is very hard to actually track, but it's not necessarily how accurate your tracking is. It's just looking for a trend over time. So you might have like a watch or something that tracks your sleep. Maybe you have an iPhone app or an Android app or whatever, and it tracks your sleep, and that's what you use to keep track of how your sleep is going, how you are progressing with that, if it's getting better, if it's getting worse, what can you do to influence that then from the data that you've collected. Stuff as well like your resting heart rate. And this is very important as well, because this is an indicator of both health and performance. Because obviously, if I'm in a performance sport that requires me to be quite fit, having a lower resting heart rate would be an indicator that I am fitter, right? So I would be looking for that to be trending in the right direction over time. And again, like there is a load of research to show that lower heart rates are predictive of long-term health to an extent. Obviously there's caveats with that, so I'm looking at that from the perspective that okay, that's something I want to do and I want to prioritize that, because that's also contributing to my overall big goal of health. And then we have stuff like blood work, and again, this could be something as simple as just checking your blood glucose. You can do that at home. It can also be like actually getting a blood panel done in the doctors. And again, like this isn't something that everyone needs to do, but again, it's a metric that you can keep track of if you are interested in trying to influence these things. And again, as I said earlier on, that doesn't mean that everyone has to do it, and it may be more important to you at certain times in your life. I do generally, like as a very general rule, like people to get some sort of blood work done when they're in their kind of 20s. Generally, that's when people are in their best health of their life. So if you have some numbers that you can always compare it to as you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, then you're in a better position than just getting blood work done when you're 40 and going, oh, I have, high cholesterol, and you think that's a huge issue. But if you were to get blood work done throughout your whole life, you might notice that, okay, this has actually been an issue through my whole life. Maybe I have some genetic polymorphisms that make me predisposed to have this issue all the time. And then it's like, okay, so now I can put that into a better context, a better perspective, So I like that. I like getting some blood work done when you're younger, and then again repeating it throughout your lifespan. Then on top of that as well, we have stuff like performance. And again, like I said, the performance in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a little bit hard to kind of keep track of specifically. But if I'm going to the gym, that's a little bit easier to keep track of, because essentially I can just keep track of the weights that I'm using. And as long as they're trending in a direction that's favorable, then we know I'm progressing with my overall performance. Same with the cardiovascular work that I'm doing. If I know that my heart rate isn't getting as high, even though my output is staying the same, then I can go, okay, so looking at the data, that appears that I'm getting fitter, or I'm able to put out a higher level of output, and like that could be like the distance you run or whatever it is, but you're doing the same time, or you're doing the same, getting to the same level of heart rate, or whatever it is. There's a lot of ways you can do this, and again, we'll get into those specifically in subsequent videos. And then finally, we have stuff like body composition. And again, there's loads of ways that you can go about tracking this. You can go very simple, just like stepping on the scales. Some scales, like the one that I have, has this kind of bioimpedance type thing. Not hugely accurate, but it gives me a good indication of something that I can track over time, and there are like stuff like calipers. There's like the picture method, like just taking a picture and comparing them, so there's loads of methods. Again, we'll get into some of the specifics of those in subsequent videos, but I'm essentially going to set some metrics that I can track, and they are going to be what I'm looking at to assess how I am actually going about achieving my overall goals. Because what a lot of people do is they set their goals, they have them dialed in, they've done what I've said. They've prioritized their goals. They're like, these are what I actually think are most important for me, given my situation right now, given my life, given my overall long-term goals. You're like, cool, have them dialed in. They set a program, right? They sit down, they get fucking paralysis by analysis for 3 hours trying to do it. They're like, okay, what about this and what about this? But they eventually settle on a program, They set that up, right? But then they never track metrics to ensure that they're actually moving towards their goals. This is one of the keys of actually achieving your goals, is like if you're not actually testing, like you're just guessing, you know, and that doesn't mean you have to go in and do like a 1RM squat or something, but it just means that you have to be tracking some metrics so you can actually assess how you are actually progressing towards your overall goals. Because again, if you're not doing that, you're kind of just guessing. Like you're essentially getting results by accident. You know, you're not keeping track of how your program is actually influencing your goals. Like, are you actually achieving what you said you wanted to achieve? And if you're not tracking that, there's no way to actually fully understand why you got the goals you did, or if you didn't achieve them. You know, like if you just go, oh yeah, I set my program and you know I achieved half the goals, like there's no, like you haven't tracked everything that you were trying to achieve, you haven't tracked specific metrics to each of those components of your program, and as a result you're like, I don't know why my fitness didn't go up, or I don't know why my strength went up but my muscle mass, like there's all these different things that can go wrong, that if you're not keeping track of some sort of metrics, like you don't really have data to show you why certain things have occurred, right? So there's a lot of threes in this. You've essentially got 3 goals: health, body composition, performance, right? And then to ensure that you achieve those, you have 3 things to set. You have to set a training program, nutrition program, and then lifestyle parameters, right? And then you have to actually set metrics within that you can keep track of. So you've essentially got goals, you've essentially got, we'll call it overall program design, and then you've got metric tracking, right? And those kind of trifecta of 3 things, those three, that's what's going to allow you to actually achieve long-term results. And again, this video is a bit more, you know, meta rather than specifics, but you'll see how I put this into play over the next few videos as I kind of go through each of these things and go, okay, so this is how you might go about setting these parameters for your overall goals. So I hope that video helped, guys. Again, if it did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends, tell your family, like all that stuff actually does help. You know, when you see YouTubers going like, oh, smash the like button, like it actually does help get the channel views, get eyes on the channel, and ultimately our goal is to help more people. So it makes sense that, you know, if you can help us achieve that, you know, we'd be pretty grateful. Anyway, guys, peace out.